Hello and welcome to Panther Pourri Express. I'm your host, Jacob Langsam. Here with me are my co-hosts, TJ Peterson and Alex Lopez. And the moment that we have been waiting for has pretty much finally happened. I think we're still waiting on the official confirmation. But all the people who know anything about anything are saying that Claude Giroux has been traded to the Florida Panthers, along with a 5th-round pick in 2024, Connor Bunnaman and German Rubitsov. The return is Owen Tippett, a 2024 conditional first-round pick. The condition is relative to all of the other conditional first-round picks based on Reinhart and Sherratt, that everything might just get pushed back a year if something crazy happens. But it is technically a conditional first-round pick. So Owen Tippett, a first-round pick in 2024, a third-round pick, I believe, also in 24.
23.
In 23. Right. So I think that's it, though, right? Tippett, a first and a third.
Yeah. So the takeaway from this,
50% retention.
Right.
Claude
the
Giroux
takeaway from this,
retention.
I think, is that we heard Mackie Samoskevich name in trade talks and never the 2024 first round pick. In my opinion, keeping Mackie Samoskevich and getting rid of the 2024 first round pick is a net positive for the Florida Panthers.
Absolutely.
Mackie Samoskevich is producing at a high level in the NCAA. He's blocked from getting that top usage by guys like Luke Hughes on defense. I mean, that doesn't really count because he's a defender, but like Matty Beniers and the Brisson kid, I can't remember his first name. Yeah, and Ken Johnson. Yeah, so he's putting up good numbers, and he's going to break out next year if he stays at Michigan, which I imagine that he will. Owen Tippett, we knew that he was going out the door. We pretty much knew that he was going to go to Philadelphia. I think people have treated him like he's, worthless, but we've seen in the past few weeks that he's very good at the AHL level. And frankly, he just didn't really have a spot here. So how could he be expected to produce in the spot minutes that he did get when they weren't really able to utilize him in a way that his strengths were being capitalized upon? And I think Philadelphia is in a much better place to do that because they have a much more shallow roster. So I would expect him to have a pretty solid end of year, maybe 5 goals, maybe even 10 if he gets hot. He's a quality shooter, so we could see that happen. On the return, I mentioned this on Twitter already, but Bunnaman and Rubtsov are not going to be Panthers ever. I mean, these are guys that are putting up like a quarter of a point per game in the AHL. It's really just to help the Flyers up against the 50 cap contract limit so they can add other prospects if they trade off some of their other players.
I also just want to point something out that if this trade exactly is as it is, the Panthers got a higher quantity of assets, which I think is hilarious. Like, obviously, Giroux dwarfs the value of everything else. But the fact that the Panthers got more assets back than we sent to Philadelphia is really funny.
Yeah, I mean, like TJ said, some of these assets they're just bodies helping Philadelphia out with their contract crunch. But it's a really big W for Zito. And after, especially the three of us were kind of like, wow, they paid a lot for Ben Sherratt to get Claude Giroux, a bona fide all-star, not a, hey, the Flyers needed an all-star, so Claude Giroux got to go. No, Claude Giroux is still an all-star player. They got him for Owen Tippett and a 2024 first-round pick. Now, for the fan base, and the third. But for the fans who were like, oh, well, you need your draft picks, and that's how you build teams for the draft. Assuming the Panthers continue on the trajectory they are, that 2024 first is going to be 25 or later. And that's a guy who at best would be joining the NHL in 2026 when this team's run would be pretty much over anyway. So the fact that you cash that asset in for now, huge W for Zito. He keeps Samoskevich. He keeps Denisenko. Those are guys who, when Giroux leaves in the offseason and Mason Marchment leaves in the offseason, like Denisenko, you can slot into the roster. You can Samoskevich, maybe if you're ready, you can slide him into that bottom 6. This, you still have those assets. Or, we were talking about how you need assets for the 2023 deadline. Samoskevich and Denisenko.
Yep.
Those guys have more value than the 2024 first. So this is a huge W for Zito. Like, if I was a Flyers fan, I'd be pissed. Like the fact that you're going to have to wait 2 years to get this 2024 first, that's almost certainly going to be a late first. Like, awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it did seem like Claude Giroux was using his leverage, his full no movement clause, in order to ensure that he was sent to Florida. Didn't want to go to Boston, didn't want to go to New York, didn't really want to go to Colorado. I'm guessing that the former two, it's because of former two, it's because he didn't see them as competitors, or he saw them as rivals to the Flyers and didn't want to play for them. Colorado, I think that's a matter of distance. If his family is going to be staying in Philly for any amount of time, he probably doesn't want to be that far away from them. Florida's much closer, 2-hour flight to Philly, very, very quick for him to get there. And going back to your point about trading these first round picks, we're seeing Toronto being less willing to do it. We're seeing Carolina being less willing to do it, but their cores are younger than the Panthers core, which isn't necessarily old, but pretty much everybody is at least 24 years old, or if not older. And I mean, Huberdeau is 28, so his regression is about to begin. Now, it's not going to be steep for another few years, but this is the window, this is the time, and Zito is wise to capitalize upon it. And by trading picks rather than prospects, you have cheap players to slot in when you lose the Mason Marchments of the world to free agency.
Yeah, it's a W. Simple as that. Claude Giroux is going to be a Panther. That first line, arguably the best first line in the NHL. You now have the already Panthers, had the deepest forward group.
Yeah, and like we had already been saying that the Panthers probably have the best forward group in the NHL. And I mentioned this on a couple of social media sites earlier today. Giroux doesn't displace anybody. Like, if you're that upset that Max Mammon is going to lose his NHL roster spot, then you must be related to Max Mammon.
Or Thomas Drance.
Also fair. But yeah, Giroux coming in does not displace anyone, and the bottom nine is already the strongest bottom nine in the league. So now you have Verhaeghe, Barkov, Giroux leading the charge, and then the Art Ross leader at the moment on your second line. Like,
it's come at me, bro.
End the season and give the Panthers the cup. It's over.
Yeah, and the one thing we haven't talked about yet, and I know we got to wrap this, is supposed to be short. Giroux is good defensively, and I know we don't value faceoffs very much, but he's also good in faceoffs, and it's a nice plus.
That'll help on the power play for sure. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to Panther Pourri Express. Stay tuned to our podcast feed to get the full reaction to all the things that happen at the trade deadline and any other news and updates in the Panthers universe.